when somebody asks you to explain Islam to them, like a colleague who may be interested in Islam, or you want to give da'wah, and generally you want to explain Islam to them, how do you generally start? What do you speak about first? Oneness of Allah. Anything else? A lot of people, what they do is they jump right into the 5 pillars, right? Which seems to kind of be the default thing to speak about, part of which is the shahada, right? However, what we should speak about first is in Islam more comprehensively, because Islam is a very, very comprehensive religion. If you look at the 5 pillars, they all relate to worship. Salat, zakat, hajj, fasting, and the declaration of faith. It all relates to kind of external worship. So anybody who wants to find a complete system that can influence and inform every part of their life and everything that happens to us and the way we live in this world as social creatures, then the 5 pillars are not sufficient. They won't find that sufficient. They'll say, that's just all worship to God. What do you do with other people? How do you have social etiquette? How do you deal with the environment? And so on. So the way to, another way to do it is to say that Islam has 5 dimensions, 5 primary dimensions. To go over them quickly, the first one is the dimension of belief. And this works very well. The first is the dimension of belief. Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where will we go? What's the purpose of this life? Are there other creatures like the angels and the devil and so on and so forth? How's the interaction between them? What is the relationship? All of that. That's got to do with the belief. Now once you fix the belief and you figured that out and you recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His greatness and His uluhiyyah and His lordliness and His being the deity worthy of worship, then you move into the second dimension. And the second dimension is the dimension of the 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are all included in the second dimension, which is the dimension of worship. So now you've recognized Allah, you've recognized your purpose in this world, and now you start worshipping Allah through the 5 pillars. Now, that's 2 things. There's still a lot more to do with life. So the third dimension and the 4th dimension, they're very similar. They both are to do with social social relationship and interactions. But one is on a monetary contractual level, transactional level, and the other one is just on an etiquette level. So the first one you can say is mu'amalat. Number 3 is mu'amalat, which are transactions, buying and selling, marriage and divorce, conflict resolution, judiciary system, and so on and so forth, hiring, selling, and everything else. Anything to do with the transaction. We have direct guidance from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in the Quran about this particular dimension, which, Kitabul Buyu, Kitabul Talaq, Kitabul Ayman, and for those who understand all of that, there's a massive section to do with that. Number 4 is the mu'asharat. Now this is where we're talking about all these ahadith, like whoever does not honor our old and does not have respect for our younger, then he's not from us. Whoever's neighbor is not free from his harm, is not of us, and so on and so forth. Right? La imana liman la ahda lah. And all of these ahadith that we have of that nature, speaking about honesty and speaking about contentment, speaking about animals, like don't stand on your animal and speak to somebody, get off the animal and then let it rest. Things of that nature. All of that to do with animals, animal rights, rights of environment, rights of others, rights of your neighbors, and so on and so forth. Mu'asharat. Number 5 then? What is number 5? Haven't we completed everything? What's number 5? The heart. It is the purification of the heart, coming back to oneself, removing the blameworthy traits like anger, jealousy and enmity and not being content, greed, and so on and so forth. Anger, extreme desire, and transplanting that or removing those and infusing our hearts with love and compassion and contentment and ithar, which means to prefer others over ourselves, and being satisfied with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept us, and so on and so forth. That obviously that level is going to affect each of these dimensions, they influence another dimension. That's why we have a lot of people today who pray a lot. You'll see them in the masjid. But when it comes to others, they've got a major problem. They've broken up with everybody in their family. There are some people who are like that. They'll pray 5 times in the masjid. They'll do lots of other overtly religious work, but nobody in their family speaks to them because they think everybody else is corrupt. So they're not going to go to any weddings, they're not going to go to anybody's house, they're not going to go to a dawah, they don't want to speak to anybody and so on because everybody's a fasiq, fajir, and that's an extreme. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mu'minu ma'lafun wa la khayra fi man la ya'lif wa la yu'laf." There are situations where people won't be doing things at 100%. But at the end of the day, there are ties of kinship which have to be maintained. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the believer is a place of affection. And there is no good in the one who is not affectionate towards others or nor is treated with affection. So where does that hadith go if it's just about everything else? So you've got that extreme. Then you've got the other so-called progressive extreme, which is that, look, it's all about the heart. It's just as though as long as I don't think bad of people, as long as I don't harm anybody, then I don't pray, that's not an issue. I don't cover my head, it's not an issue. At least I'm fine with everybody. You're fine with the people, but are you fine with Allah? So each one of these dimensions have to be taken into consideration.